Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening for those who are joining us from the other coast of the world. Thank you for joining us. This Chai and Just Chat session is new, sort of in a new day because we usually do it on a weekend. If you've heard and listened to us before, we've done it either on a Saturday or a Sunday. So after a long time, we are doing this on a weekday, and I'm glad that you're able to join us today. We have an exciting round of experts today going to talk about storytelling. I personally am so interested in hearing about this. I try to be a good storyteller, but I'm sure there's so many aspects and elements to good storytelling, and that's what even I'm going to learn today. I have my chai with me and my water, of course. I hope you have yours too, and please sit back, relax, and learn along with us. There, all of the panelists are having their chai or coffee, so join us. I'm going to do a quick introduction of all of them here today, and after that I have a general question for them, and then definitely we'll go into the core discussion. We've received all the questions that you've asked us when you registered, but also please feel free, if you're logged in through your YouTube channel account, you can ask us questions live on the session as well, on the comment section. Yeah. So today I have the pleasure of introducing Terry Eileen Liggins. She is a ghostwriter for 20 years and an author of her own books. She also understands the importance of book coaching, which led her to create an in-person 3-day intensive group space of coaching how to write books and authors. She's also has an undergrad, completed her undergrad in journalism and communication, an MBA, and an MJ degree in health law. So Terry, that's something that I learned recently after reading your bio. I didn't know that. So she combines her business acumen with her passion for helping individuals. And right now, Terry, you've completely taken a new course of a journey, which is the Law and Raw Institute of Balanced Health Living. And I would love to hear that story. So we have a lot to hear from you. But what Terry, you are doing is telling people the vitality or the importance of eating raw plant-based foods, and this is because of your personal testimonial as well, and along with what you saw happening to your friends where they're getting early heart attacks in much early ages. Did I miss anything, Terry?
No, that's pretty good. There's a little extension to that, but I'll get to that when it's my turn.
You please go ahead. I want you all to say other things added to your profile right now. Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I have currently am in the process of developing an app. I am moving into more of the elder care, helping individuals get their final wishes and matters in order in this fourth quarter of our lives, helping baby boomers and others. All of that's to leave a legacy and not a load. So that follows along with more of what I'm doing, keeping me more in the book coaching business, more so than in the writing business.
Very nice. And we wish you all the best for that new app, Terry. Dr. John Uglu is a husband, father, and Amazon's best-selling author of The Morale Booster. He's also a strategist and a motivational speaker. And John helps individuals and organizations achieve their strategic goals. So John, I know you have so much more. As I started reading about you and your mom and how you were such a shy person. You won't even believe the last time I was on the Chai and Chat, one of my previous batchmate from my medical school said, you don't even know how Nazeera used to be such a timid person, and look at her talking now. So I said, that's how we all evolve. So when I read yours, I remembered that, like how your mom, gave you that comfort zone to come out of your shyness, and look at you today. And I've gone on John's show, and his show is very, to extent, unique, because he will ask you questions and then he will tell the audience, did you guys just hear that? Just like a preacher. So John, very happy to have you here in our show today. Your ultimate goal is to help 1 billion or more people before December 31st, 2041 to understand that they were created for purpose, with a purpose, or they should be on purpose. So all the best with that numbers. John, thank you for being with us today. Alicia?
My pleasure.
Awesome. Alicia is a sales and marketing expert, also known as the client whisperer, and she sold millions in revenue in the corporate world, but got tired of I'm not going to expand the word, of the letters BS, transition to running her own business, coaching solopreneurs, right, and sales professionals with a unique sales and marketing approach. And I've gone on your show, Alicia. It was really wonderful to get on there. And basically, you're trying to tell people that they can be introverts. It's okay to be an introvert, but I'm sure that the introverts have their own way of making sales, even if they're in business, and they shouldn't shy away from the business world.
Yeah, introverts are actually even better at sales.
Definitely. And so that's what we want to learn from you today. And for those who have been uncomfortable of if they call themselves an introvert, then probably we would be learning a few things from you today. I know you have to leave in an hour, so I'll make sure I ask more of the questions to you in the first hour. Yeah. And Julie, oh my gosh, Julie, thank you so much. Julie is a recent friend, but a deep friend. Can I say that? we just got to know each other the past few months, but we've just become so close. It's just, they say, like, it doesn't matter the years and months of how many you know a person. It's just that how deep connected you can become within a few months or a few minutes, right? So Julie is the publisher for My Foresight magazine, a community magazine in its 12th year in print. Wow, that's great that you still keep it going, Julie. You are also the executive director of Corner Farms Response, an agency that assists non-profit organizations by providing grants, sponsorships, and other forms of assistance. For over 20 years, she has numerous committees. She's been on several numerous committees and board of directors for nonprofits. She has an MBA and also a bachelor's degree in psychology. And Julie and I are a part of the Forsyth County's Chambers One Forsyth initiative. So that's how we got closer. And we in fact celebrated the Diwali and the Indian heritage culture sort of last month. Yeah, awesome. Yes. Anju, so glad to have you here, Julie. Anju Gatani is someone I met probably 3 years ago, and at that time she was in designing the cover of her book that she wants to release, and she's much far way ahead in the game today. She's published the series of books that she wanted to, that we talked about. She's also a fiction author, a freelance journalist, and a blogger and a former newspaper reporter as well. She was born in India but grew up in Hong Kong, and she has lived and published in Singapore, India, Australia, New Jersey, Connecticut, and cover stories and much more. And she's in Atlanta, Georgia now with her husband and 2 dashing boys and a rebel lion-head rabbit. Duty and Desire, the debut in Winds of Fire series was actually released in, probably was it in 2020? Awesome, sounds good. So it's the name of the book is Duty and Desire, but we can't wait to hear from you further on how the journey was and what made you go for it, even with some of the obstacles you might have faced. Yeah.
Obstacles is an understatement.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Okay, but see, the good part is you are here, so people are going to hear about how did you cross those obstacles. Yeah. So we have Olivannan Gopalakrishnan, last but not the least. We saved the best for the last, and he's joining all the way from India. So thank you, Oli. It's 1:30 a.m. and so if you doze off, we can understand. Yeah, you are an engineer with a post-graduation in management, and you run your own publishing company, which is called the Emeralds Publishers. And so we would love to hear about how that industry is going. And so you are also very heavily involved with the Rotary, and you've been a district governor with distinction as well. You've addressed several meetings in and outside of India. You are a great motivator, coach, and also designed and conducted workshops for all peoples. And you've also authored 3 books. So if there are any updates, please let us know. But before I ask any of you the question, I just want to give a 1-minute spill on why Chai and Just Chat was started, and the question right after that, I want to ask each one of you the question that I'm going to answer, right? So 5 years ago when I ran for public office, I was given a completely different picture of who I was not. I understand it was it had some of the political, aura to it, but I was just being told the person that I was not, and I saw so much hatred and hostility, and I saw so much hostility between two groups of people whom I liked from either side, whether religious belief system, whether origin of the countries, or whether political affiliation of either group. I had wonderful friends from both the sides, and but I saw that they were not connecting with each other, and I felt, you know what, the person that I've been portrayed is not who I am, so I need to tell my story, and I need to say who I am, and I want to build that bridge between people who are hostile to each other, or who don't understand each other, who've never had the opportunity to cross the bridge or build that bridge. What I saw was literally a little bit of more division than unity. So that's when I realized, chai, when people don't usually fight when having chai, they usually get together for chai or coffee, right? And just is justice. So when I say chai and just, chat just stands for justice, so that we have an unbiased voice. And chat is, it's not talk. When people say I need to have a talk with you, we're a little bit scared and we like shy away. But I chat, I'm always ready for a chat. Yeah, let's go chat. So that's how Chai and Just Chat was started 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, and it's been a monthly thing for now, till now, every month with different topics. Yeah. So that is my story for Chai and Just Chat, to unite people on different grounds, cultural and thought process and perspectives, to say that we all have something much more in common than differences. So that's my story. But I would like to ask you, Alicia, why do you do what you do?
Um, well, I like custom sales strategy and helping people who think that they're not good at sales realize that they are. They are just using a strategy or pretending to be someone that they think that they need to be. Um, and it's actually not who they need to be. So I really like empowering people to own this skill that they definitely have. And it's a skill that can make them a lot of money, which is awesome. But it can also really give them a ton of confidence. So they can show up more powerfully in almost every area of their life. Sales pretty much applies to everything. So people might think that they're not good at sales, but have you ever sold your spouse on a date night or a vacation, or your kids on eating vegetables, or your friend on going to a movie? It's the same thing. So it's really a great life skill to give somebody. And I find it rewarding.
Nice. And so, are you doing anything different from what they did out there in the corporate field?
Yeah, well, especially like in the high ticket space. So the way that I approach sales is very different. There are people who are really good at sales, and they usually never had any training. They just realized that it was a regular conversation. It's when people have training that they end up being bad at sales, ironically. So, showing people how to just remember being a regular human. And there's definitely ways to articulate things better and be genuinely curious and ask questions that are relevant to the information you need to have in order to move forward. But that approach is just very different. It's not like psychological tricks and manipulative stuff and backing someone into a corner with their own words. It's just really being transparent and real, like you would if somebody needed to know what restaurant to go to by you. You have expertise. What you can make a recommendation based on what they're looking for. So that approach is definitely radically different from most sales training, which is kind of like a one size fits all thing, which I mean, I've never been able to name one thing that's one size fits all ever. So to say that there's only one way to do sales is ludicrous. So you should customize it to your personality and your audience and whatever it is that you're selling. Because just because something worked really well for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work really well for you. And that's okay. There's something that will. So yeah, it is very different. And I love that part of it too. Like, I think it's refreshing for people to learn that they don't have to have juggling all these like psychological mind tricks in their mind just to be effective at sales.
Very nice. Alicia, this was a question I was going to ask later, but let me ask you right now. So I know we've usually heard introvert, extrovert, but then now we have ambivert and omnivert. And I'm like, okay, what else exists out there. So can you quickly tell us, I think people know exactly what's intro and extro, but can you tell us an omni or an ambivert?
Yeah. So the thing is that most people are on a spectrum. Like very few people are 100% one way or the other. And a lot of people think an introvert means you're shy and an extrovert means you're outgoing. But that's actually has nothing to do with it. So there are shy extroverts and there are outgoing introverts. So one of the main ways to know if you're an introvert or extrovert is how you get your energy. So if you interact with people and are drained and then need to like recharge alone, you're an introvert, which is me. I love people, but I have to recharge alone. Extroverts actually get energy from people to the point where, like, if you've ever known someone who's like wanting to just stay up till 5 a.m. doing absolutely nothing, like, what? Like, I'm like, if it's worth it, I'll do it. But I mean, y'all are just talking and playing pool, like that person, and which I think is a superpower, honestly, that I wish that I had. Then you're an extrovert. So it's actually really hard for shy extroverts because they only have like a couple people that they can plug into that are close to them. And then there are other things like extroverts are verbal processors, which I am actually, and introverts have to think and analyze before they talk, which usually trips them up on a sales conversation because they feel like they have to be so on the spot. So there are traits of both. And like for me, example, I have traits of both, and I get mistaken all the time for an extrovert just because I like people and I'm not shy.
Got it. Yeah. So got, probably omnivert and ambivert sort of falls into mix of these spectrums. Oh, that's
Yes.
great. So, John, how about you? Why do you do what you do?
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Alicia, I learned so much from you right now.
Oh,
You said
cool.
something. Yeah, you said it's when we take trainings on sales that we become bad at sales. I agree with you because children can sell you, they can ask you questions till you get tired and give them what they want. All right. So thank you. That was great. So
Yeah.
thank you, Nazira. Now, when you introduced me, you introduced me as one who used to be a shy person, and actually, I transitioned from shyness to public speaking. When I was a teenager, I knew I had so much, content inside of me. I had the opportunity of speaking to those people who are close to me, telling them what they can do, strategies on how they can, accomplish what they want. But I never knew there was a career path. I was shy. I was always trying to keep to myself, always wanting to be only in the midst of people that, probably lived with me or relatives. And it got to the point where I started doing personal development. And that brought me out of my shell. And the moment I was able to overcome that shyness, which was a limiting belief in my life for too long, a limiting belief that kept me at the back of the room for so long, I knew that there was somebody out there. There were people out there who were also struggling with that same limiting belief and waiting for me to share my strategies on how I was able to overcome it. So, we are all born into this world to end up being consultants. So I chose to be a consultant in that area to teach people how to overcome shyness. So that's what I do. I love it. My goal is to constantly impact people. Like you said, I have a goal to impact 1 billion or more people, showing them strategies on how to overcome limiting beliefs, showing them strategies on how to find their purpose on or before the 31st of December 2041. So that's my goal. That's my strategy. I chose that purposely because people are waiting out there for me to help them overcome those limiting beliefs. Thank you.
Very nice, John. Very a great story to remember. And so, hi, Terry, please tell us, why do you do what you do?
Okay, well, and thank you also for having me here. I would say that as a introvert. How do I put it? An outgoing introvert. I like that. I like that because that does describe me as a T. And as one who probably had an entrepreneurial spirit most of my adult life, I found myself in corporate America for almost 20 years. And then there came a time where I had an abrupt stop to that because I had a heart attack at age 40 and was soon after that diagnosed as having an autoimmune disease, a pretty terrible one, or serious one, I should say. And I could not work any longer. So I always had this love of writing. And even prior to my writing was my art ability. I think starting at the age of 4 or 5, I was just an artist all the way through college. Wish I could still do it now, but I passed that superpower on to my son. So I'm glad it wasn't lost. But I just love to write, but I never used it as a profession until I was forced out of corporate America and voila, what do I do besides being a stay-at-home wife and mom? I started writing for friends who were business owners, and they needed whether it was customer letters, brochures, anything like that had content that needed content. I was writing that for them, and from there I started editing books for individuals, and from there I merged into a ghostwriter because I found that people just really don't like to write. They don't. They have stories to tell. They have a need to get their story out there, but they don't want to be the one to do it. And I found myself writing for Les Brown back in the early 2000s. And as most of you may know, he's an awesome motivational speaker, and he would have groups of people come in for his training to be a speaker. He would ask them, do you have a book? If you're on stage, you need to have a book. And if they said no, he would say, go see Terry. And so that is how I began writing so many rags to riches stories, autobiographies, that I would say pretty much 98% of my clientele involves motivational, or I should say autobiographies. And so I just love doing it. Somehow I have a gift, I call it a gift for sure, of writing in other people's voices. I don't know how to teach that. I don't know if it is something that can be taught, but I can, just based on the stories that they tell, the information that they have gone through as a child, whether it's trauma or just their different experiences through life, I'm able to weave that into a story, bringing it to life. It's still their story, but I make it grammatically correct and creative and make it into a page turner for them. And so the book is something that would allow someone to feel as though they're talking directly to that person, as though they were sitting on the sofa with them. And that's pretty much how I've come into this. And so I just love doing that. And that's why as I transition out of the whole ghostwriting era, I've been doing it for actually 22 years now. Whew. Started in the year 2000 doing that is when I had to come out of corporate America. So I'm transitioning into doing this app and working with elder care and baby boomers and such, but I couldn't come all the way out of the writing part. And so that's why I do the book coaching, and I have book workshops, and I help publish as well.
Very nice, Terry. What a great story. I would like to go to Anju next. Anju, please let us know, why do you do what you do?
Thank you, first of all, for having me here. And I'm just thrilled to share the stage here with all these wonderful panelists and listening to what they have to say. Very inspiring. So I would say that why I do what I do is I'm a writer. I'm a fiction author. I have been writing and been published in India, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, and all these other places, including the US, for over 20 years. Anywhere from feature, fiction, cover stories to fiction novels. And I know that I joked and I said, yes, obstacles is an understatement, but despite all odds, my Winds of Fire series got optioned to Hollywood. And it's an international book pick by the Pulpwood Queen and Timberglaze Book Club Nation. So when I say, overcoming obstacles, you can do anything. really. There's nothing that will stop you. And it took me 4 or 5 manuscripts to really understand what on earth am I writing? Why am I writing these books? And that's where I determined my brand, which is really I'm writing the books that I do to bridge cultures and break barriers, which goes back to Nazeera, what you were talking about, the mental barriers that people have in their minds and overcoming that through filling in the gaps. So I realized I'm kind of like I call myself a vehicle. I'm just mediating the stories given to me, which my characters come to me. This is I know it sounds really stupid, but they just come to me. I'm not asking for them, and then I have to determine who they are and ask all the questions: who, what, when, why, where, what is their story, where are they coming from, what are the pivotal points, the core conflicts. That's where I start to work backwards to get to the crux of the story and develop the story. So for
Awesome.
me, writing is a meditation process. And all my books, somehow I've learned, lead to self-empowerment.
Wow, very nice. And in fact, that was one of the question. Is it like, is writing sometimes a spiritual practice? And sort of you answered yes to it. So, so good to know, Anju. So next, Oli, can you please tell us why do you do what you do? And again, Oli, we can understand if you're dozing off. It's 1:30 or 2 a.m. there in India.
Morning, and thank you very much. I really appreciate inviting me for this wonderful session. Of course, it's a difficult time for me, but still, I'm very happy to be part of that. I really enjoyed what every panelist shared before me. Yes, I'm a publisher, second generation publisher. My father was a publisher, so I turned out to be a publisher, obviously. But my consuming passion is also for uh, public speaking and writing. But during my school days and college days, I was never a speaker or a writer. But later on, I thought I should cultivate this habit. Today, both writing and speaking has become my consuming passion. I'm so happy and blessed that I could write both in English as well as my mother tongue, Tamil. So through which I can convey what I wanted to the people. As Anju said, we are only just a facilitator or mediator between our whatever that comes into us to the readers. Very recently, I started writing stories a few years back, and thanks to COVID days, the lockdown days, I have nothing except that I should start living with my own people. As she rightly said, that the characters that push her to write. It's true with every writer. Right? You start living with the new characters almost every day, and that you try and create a story. That's how I became a full-time uh, writer, but unfortunately, this the post-lockdown stages when we are getting back to work, I find it really difficult meeting both the worlds. I have to go to office, a very busy, hectic schedule. On the other side, my writing passion also is for me. So that's what is my life is all about at the moment. Thanks, Nazira, for inviting me.
Great, Uli. Good to know that you are a publisher as well as the writer as well. So all the authors are coming to you to get their books published. So you've seen both sides of the world. And so it's good to know that you're in both industries. So I have more questions for you, Oli, as we move forward. But Julie, if you can please unmute yourself and tell us why do you do what you do?
Thank you for having me, Nazeera. I do what I do out of necessity and therapy. I became a widow 7 years ago and realized that I had a bit of a given talent to tell stories. Everyone has a story to tell, is whether you want to tell it or not. And as time passed, I just realized there's so much good out there, and there's so many great things that we should be telling, that I decided to print a magazine and make it about the good in people, the good in our communities, and everything that we can do to make things better for the rest of our world. We are all humans, and all humans have something to say. And if it's bad, then let's talk about it and fix it, change it if we can. I deal a lot with children. I don't have any kids. I just borrow them from people and then I give them back. And there's the innocence and the beauty of a child is something that we all just need to grasp, learn from it, and perhaps publish it somehow, whether it be a video, a magazine, a book. they have so many lessons to teach us in their tender age that sometimes we take it for granted. You know, they see a leaf and it's like the most beautiful thing in the world. We see a leaf and it's like, oh, let's blow it out of the driveway because it's messing things up. So it's not I don't see myself as anything other than a conduit to information, but I just want that information to be positive. We don't live in a perfect world, but by gosh, let's talk about the perfect things that we can. And that's why I do the magazine. It's been 12 years. Can you believe it? Yay, me.
Awesome. Great job, Julie. My question is, and we're all humans, right? We like people and sometimes we don't like people. So do you get to decide whom you don't like and you don't publish their material? Oh my gosh, Julie, isn't that sad?
You're asking me that? Well, heck yeah. That's the beautiful thing about the beauty of storytelling is common sense and honesty. I get some stuff sent my way that I look at it and go, how made you write that? At the same time, I respect it, but I also know that I'm not the conduit for that information to be passed along. And I've gotten very good about saying no. I used to say yes to everything because I thought, oh, well, you can't say no to people. Yeah, you can. I can say no to myself. I have written material before that I reread it and go, what was wrong with my coffee or my chai? Because it made no sense. At that moment, I realized that it's okay to say no to myself and to others. And I have to be a steward of information. I have to be able to say no when I truly in my heart believe it's not the right message. Maybe the right message for someone else or for another publication. And I do tell people that if I don't agree with what's sent my way, I'll let them know, my first site is not the conduit to your information. However, you can talk to A, B, C, D, E and pass it along. But I never say no without a reason. I don't want ever to be seen as, well, she owns her magazine, so she just does whatever she wants. Kind of do, but I also want to make sure that I do it in a nice way. Because after all, we're all in the same mess, We're just trying to help each other out.
Definitely. So all the best with that, Julie, and thank you for sharing your story. So Terry, that comes back to, we are surrounded by stories every day, and probably the audience just heard like 7 of us stories of why we do what we do. I started with why I'm doing this Chai and Just Chat, right? And you all shared why you write, why you're publishing, why you're a publisher, why you're a sales for entrepreneurs, sales strategist for entrepreneurs. So I think the power of stories. So coming back to the power of stories, right? So we hear stories on television, radio, newspaper, and nothing but stories, right? The Bible, the religious books, I can keep going, the dramas that we see, the comedians who come up and share their stories, right? And so, and we tell stories even to our friends. But my question to you is, Terry, can you think of the last story you heard? Not in the last half an hour with us, but can you think of a recent last story that you heard?
A recent last story that
you heard either from today, last week, during the Thanksgiving, or yesterday, today morning, that you can think of that touched you?
Oh, I've had several deaths that have been close to me over the holiday. It's just, it's amazing. A friend who buried her father, a friend whose ex-husband died, but she has the daughter there who is her dad, the daughter's dad. Just a friend whose nephew at age 12 passed, and then just yesterday, a woman who's just been a spiritual mother to me for many years. She made her transition, and so I think in each situation, the dynamics of how individuals deal with it, how they handle it, and how that person who is passed on left a legacy. What we learn from that person, sometimes more after they're gone than when they're here on earth. And so, and everyone deals with grief differently. The mourning period is, who can say how long it's supposed to be? I just recently, it's been 2 years already. I can't believe it's been that long. 2 years ago, I felt led in my spirit to move from the West Coast um, back here to my hometown in Ohio to help take care of my family and my parents. And I right away I was like, maybe I'll wait until after winter. you know, I've grown accustomed to warmer weather and I like it. But no, it was a strong urging to go when I was supposed to go. And thank goodness I listened because I got to spend the last 4 months of my father's life before he transitioned on Christmas Eve, 2019. And just, I believe that as one who loves stories and I'm accustomed to hearing individual stories, I think it was no coincidence that I was the only one who happened to be in the room when he transitioned. I'm like, oh,
Ah,
yay. I came 3,000 miles and, there were, his wife was by his side so many hours. But at that particular time, and what I did is I turned my voice recorder on. I mean, my recorder on my phone because he was speaking to his angels at the time. And I don't think anyone else would have thought to do that, like a ghostwriter would. I'm always recording people's lives up to the very end. I had that opportunity to do that. So I hear story. I make what I hear and what I experience every day, I turn into a story.
wow.
Even if real quickly, even my own situation, as I mentioned, I had an autoimmune disease and it took me 12 years of searching to find the answer and to find out that food was the answer. And when I transitioned to a 100% raw diet, I got rid of that disease in just 7 days. Seven
Wow.
days. And that was almost 9 years ago. And so what I did is I was journaling my journey through all of that, and I turned that into a book very
Wow.
easily. Turning those journal entries into a book that I call Get Your Raw On. That was back in 2015 or something like that. So just anything and everything throughout my daily life is a story that I can, see someone turning into a book.
So does it give a reality check of why you are here in this world and get on track for your purpose rather than whining about all the unnecessary things that goes on?
It sure does. It really does. Um, be, because we, as John's goal is to let individuals know that you are born on purpose for a purpose, with a purpose, and so if you just really seek internally, you see that it comes out in all that you do and all that you experience. And a lot of people, when they get quiet and meditate on that, can turn that into a book that will inspire others. And that's one of my goals is to inspire, educate, and motivate individuals to a higher purpose, to their higher purpose, and being their ultimate self.
Very nice. So I'm going to go to Alicia right after John, though I had other questions planned for others, but because Alicia is leaving at 4, so I want to make sure she answers a few questions for me. But John, so like I said, Terry just gave a long list of stories and how she used some of the experiences to transform not just her life but also others' life, and how it has brought her to reality check on what happens in everyday life. Right? For many centuries, even our ancestors have been telling stories. They sit around, they've sat around campfires. So and even at kitchen table dinner time we have our family stories going on, right? So stories itself hasn't stopped, but does it matter who tells the story? Because those who tell the story are defining the culture. Is it true?
Well, I agree with you on that because the storyteller is an influencer, and we were born into this world to do four major things. Four major things: to serve, to lead, to influence, and to impact positively. And the storyteller falls within all four of those classifications. So when it comes to storytelling, it is advisable to look beyond the storyteller and focus more on the message, because the storyteller is a vessel. The storyteller is just a vessel who has been brought into this world just to fulfill that purpose, to pass information across, to serve with his or her story, to lead with his or her story, to influence positively with his or her story, and to impact, that's to leave a legacy with his or her story. Whatever we do, we must always look beyond the physical appearance of that storyteller. He or she is just a vessel with that gift, that innate gift. And storytelling is a skill, it's a gift, right? I grew up with my grandmom. And for those of us who, are from the part of the world where we don't put our parents in care homes, they live with us till they die, we enjoy those storytellings, and it sticks. So, sometimes those gestures are those things that would help you remember. So we definitely have to look beyond the storyteller and focus more on the message. That pick those that are relevant to you and help that, use that to improve on your philosophy of life, right?
Very nice, very, very well said, John. And I do miss my grandma's stories as well. So, something that has stuck with me, some of the stories that grandpas and grandmas have told me. So, Alicia, let me go to the business story. As you can see, every business has a story as well. And now so does every story have to have does the story have to be about people? And if it's going to be a business story, like who's the hero in that business story? And when was the last time, or do even businesses think about adding a business story during their office meetings, during a presentation? And have you attended a recent presentations that utilize the skills of storytelling to keep their employees or customers or clients engaged?
Wow, it would be so great if they did, but no, that is not a common practice in corporate America. That would be a wonderful practice, because the problem a lot of times with corporate America and other situations, like, you have a message that you want to convey, but a lot of people are just telling the facts, and facts are not as easy to retain as the story behind the facts. So if you have a story attached to it, people will remember it. And in a business, as far as marketing and sales, the story should always be about your audience. The harsh truth is nobody cares about you, and everybody cares about themselves. So what are you as a business going to do for someone else? And it's not like, ooh, amazing strategy. That's a deliverable. That's a fact. So a lot of people end up focusing on like the things they do instead of what they do for a person. They're assuming that the other person is going to connect the dot of that deliverable to the outcome that they get. And instead, you need to tell the story for them, that this is where you are, we offer this solution, and then you end up here. And that makes it so that the person says, oh, I know what you do, and I want it.
Right. Definitely. And so someone we all remember, especially across the world, is Steve Jobs, right? He always inspired people, and through his experiences or what he said, and people would take action, right? We still use his quotations in some of the speeches that we give. So do you think a personal brand can be used for marketing strategy, or to increase the influence for a sale?
Absolutely. So, especially like in recent times, I think it used to be more popular to be like very buttoned up, right? And like a logo. But people don't connect with logos. They connect with people. And more than ever, they want that transparency and authenticity. So they want to have an identity or identify with a community because of a story that they tell themselves about who they are. So if the story they tell themselves about who they are aligns with the story of who you are, representing your company and what you believe and what your mission is and whatever, then that's going to make them want to work with you more than if you just talked about what you did. That personality that, usually involves like your beliefs and your interests and what you're not about and what your values are. Those are all things that people can connect to and say, me too.
Okay, sounds good. So, what is the difference? You might have answered this. What is the difference between boring and the soulless content as companies continue to create it, and just so, like you said, they're missing out the real customers or the people with it? Do you have any pointers for even business owners are listening to our session today? Like, how can they start even making a sale by proving not just the service what they have, but beyond that they're real people?
Yeah, I think a really big issue for a lot of people, and unless you're like in some type of legal career or whatever, is they speak very formally in their marketing and in their regular conversation, and it feels sterile. It feels like it's not a person. So when you're writing, think, how would I say this in a conversation? And write it like you would say it, and people will identify with it much more. As far as like being boring, I think it becomes boring when your goal is self-motivated. So when it's very clear that your goal is to look a certain way in the story you're telling, or to have get people to buy your stuff or whatever, then it's a boring story. But if your story is to convey a message that impacts the other person, it's typically going to be interesting.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, completely understand. And thank you so much, Alicia. I might have one more question before you leave. But Anju, I want to come to you about asking you a question about what stories are you telling? I know you said you're a fictional writer. And so should stories be built on a real event, or would it be morally wrong to make up a story?
So I'd like to tie in with what John and Terry said about story being organic. And I would like to take it one step further, personal experience, and say that honestly, everybody has a story to tell. We are all storytellers, all of us. It's just that, as John said, the choices we make are the ones which impact our lives. And as Terry said, the stories that she has been living through and hearing through over the last few months, they're really difficult stories to digest and process because they're about grief, they're about loss, but they are stories about people who have had their time with us and then left, maybe for a better place, we don't know. So the way I have interpreted, the right to tell a story is everybody has a right to tell a story. There is no cookie cutter way to tell or narrate or dialogue. Think about movies, it's audiovisual. Think about the number of directors we have, from Michael Bay to Ron Howard to M. Night Shyamalan. They're all different storytellers. They're all telling the story they can in the best way they know how. And then I look at my work, which is an author. I'm using the medium of words on paper to be able to convey my story in the best way I know how. Now, if the project has got optioned, that means a producer has taken it to tell and interpret the story that I have said in his or her own interpretation. But it's the same story, it's just a different way of bringing it to a different audience, or possibly the same audience. So we are really all storytellers. We all have a right to tell our story. But what helps is being able to determine what works for you, what clicks for you. And as Alicia said, it's at the end of the day, the storyteller is most effective when he can convey that story, not through what he wants, but through the character and what the audience wants to see of the character. It's about the audience engaging the readers or the cinema goers or the theatrical viewers out there. It's about them, and then being able to channel your skill to meet that requirement. And going back to John said, that's what I tell everybody. I'm honestly just a vehicle. I'm only a vehicle that holds the pen and puts it on paper to try and tell my story in the best way I know how. And even today, after 4 books and having been published in all these different formats, I still struggle to find the right words. So we're all storytellers, really, we are.
Definitely. So let me ask you this follow-up question. So this generation of children, right, they're exposed to so many stories, even sometimes that we don't know, right? We are not in many of the social media that they are in, especially the teenagers. So is there... Are we interconnected through this generation or has this way of telling stories changed?
I think stories have become shorter. they've become more fragmented, more episodic. And of course, it caters to shorter attention spans, which is what we're reading in the newspapers now that, kids are coming up with just the recent thing about the TikTok episode and how it's impacting young girls and, the kind of Tourette's and tics they're coming up with. Then, of course, we have issues like ADHD. So we really have to question what is a better way to tell the same story if it's having a negative impact. And of course, if we're parents, guiding our children through the right process so that they can eventually be able to judge what is right for me versus what's wrong for me versus what's better for me. So really, and technology is only going to improve and progress. What we have today is going to be an upgraded version by tomorrow. Believe me, all these great companies are going to come out with the next digital hype version by the end of next year. So we cannot curtail progression. We cannot curtail development. What we can do is we can help the next generation navigate by building and helping them ingrain a stronger GPS system of their own to be able to decipher which route to go and how far to go. And really, when that's not working, reroute, take the other direction.
Very well said. Anju, I think you used the keywords of organic characters. So there can be stories that doesn't have to be truthful, but the characters are organic and it's in your mind and you put them together and making up a story. So Oli, let me come. So thank you, Anju. Oli, let me come back to you. So if we are all going to be storytellers, who's actually going to read? You're on mute, Oli.
Basically, a writer should also be a good reader. Unless you read, you cannot produce. So everyone should be a reader. Only then it will come out as a writer. So each one of us will be audience to others.
Very well said.
That's my answer.
Starting from each one of us, right? So, Oli, stories teach us who we are and what we want to be. Sometimes we express that in form of articles, experiences through books, through drama or all that. But tell me, is there something called a good story, and what is a good story?
This good story is from different perspectives. For example, from writer's perception, it should be read by as many people as possible. From the reader's perception, it should engage them. It should give them some sort of a feeling. They should get something out of it. That's what is all a good story about. But if you ask me, some of those very important structure of a story, we know that the theme of the story is very, very important. The theme should help us to, in some way it should help us in our own life or whatever it may be. There should be some theme, right? Even if there is today, we come out with stories with no theme also. That's right. It is some kind of an experience. The plot is very important. How the writer builds the plot. That's the crux, I would say. More than the content, how it's presented actually. There should be something there in that. If it is a short story, you should have something there, some kind of an issue, some kind of a challenge. So the reader is engaged. In the end, you try to come out and give some solution to that. So that's how that makes it very interesting to a reader. Then the structure. How are you going to structure your story? That's very important. This narrative style is important. That also makes it a difference. If it's going to be in the first person or the third person, or if it is going to be the present tense or past tense, such kind of things is a choice of the reader. He has to judiciously mix all that, so that makes it interesting for the reader. So if a story is read by many people, we can say that the objective is that whatever I produce, the success of it depends whether it is read by many people. In publishing, we say a good book is that if you publish a book, only 50% of the job is done. But the book has to be read by to whom it is intended to. Similarly, a story should be read by as many people as possible.
Or seen as a movie, or hear it from those who are speaking, even in a drama theatrical aspect. So very well said. I keep hearing the word engaged. So the audience has to be engaged. So I see that as a common theme so far, and organic as well. So Alicia and Julie, I'm coming to you, but because Alicia, I know you have to leave in a few minutes, so I want to keep this question before you go. So if the recipient, whether in the business story or even in any other stories that is being given out, if the recipient doesn't get what was intended, does that mean the communication failed?
I would say yes, it does. Usually the person didn't get the message because the person who was delivering it, stories are made up of experiences, right? So you have to understand what the other person's experiences are in order to give them the experience that you want. So usually there's just a lack of understanding about what the other person is going through. So it really is so much about understanding who you're talking to. And you can do that by asking questions or research or, I would say the communication failed usually because you don't understand what was important to that person. So it might have been successful for somebody else, probably just not to the exact recipient that you had. So like when you're in business, for example, talking to a VP, they're going to want a different story than a manager. You have to know what's important to the person that you're talking to.
And
so go ahead.
So my question was, so the business story, does it have to be completely truthful? Because sometimes some businesses cannot be completely truthful because they've gone through a rough patch of downsizing, or they've completely gone at negative balance. So is it okay? Is that a story to tell?
Well, it depends on what you want from the story. So all the detail, that's something that a lot of people get.
And that's the truth, right? So we are basically, should a business hide the truth in order? I mean, I think there's a balance, and that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think it also depends on the motive. Like, are you tricking people? Can you really get them results? Then I would focus on how you can get them results, and you don't have to tell them all the mistakes you made figuring out how you can get somebody results. That's not going to help them understand the message. It's going to cloud the message. So you can really get stuck in the weeds sometimes in a story, and then the message is a little bit lost. So focusing on what's important to the message you're trying to communicate, and as long as you're not trying to do something bad to somebody, I think it's fine to leave that stuff out. It's stuff that they don't necessarily need to know. It's kind of like when somebody tells you a story and they really want to just tell you about something weird that someone told them at the grocery store, but instead they tell you what time they woke up and what they ate and how long the commute to the grocery store. And it's I don't need to know that. And now I'm lost and I don't care anymore about what happened at the grocery store. So I hope that makes sense. And
yeah.
I want to, Nazeera, this was wonderful. I should have known that if you were putting it on, that all these people would be wonderful. But I'm honored to have been with you guys. I loved so much of what all of you had to say. And you had really great questions, Nazeera. They were thoughtful. They weren't things that people ask all the time. I think it's a really great conversation about something that impacts everybody in every moment of their life. And you just did a great job, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Alicia, and we're going to miss you for the next hour, but we wish you all the best, and thank you for answering that business can have a story and it can be truthful sometimes, or many times.
Omission, lie of omission. And a lot of times you'll tell a story about your customer, and it doesn't have to be one customer that you know. It's kind of like what Anju was saying. As long as it's, based on it organically, experiences that have happened, you can be telling the story about a customer that is a combination of people that you talk to. So yeah, do we know a guy named Steve that had this exact experience? No, but it's not really important, because saying that Steve did is going to make your customer understand what is happening more than if you just say what you do for people.
Very well said. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you. So, So, Julie, thank you, Alicia. Bye-bye. So, Julie, let me get back to you, right? And as John and all others said, storytelling has been sort of a course in an ancient art, and is also has a scientific reasoning behind how it impacts the customers, or the people we are telling the stories to, right? So recently, I had attended a German American Chamber of Commerce event, and the Porsche's regional director was there, and he talked about, Julie, he said Porsche has its start button on the left side of the steering wheel. Usually we are all used to the right side. And he told us the story of why this Porsche has it on the left side of the wheel, the start button. And it has stuck with me, right? And he also talked about the archetypes of every story. And that's what I want, because you have a psychology background, just to explain the human psyche, right? And also it shows that there are 12 character archetypes that is found across all cultures in different periods across the world, right? So these are collective conscious and collective unconscious, and where ultimately something that we all have in common, right? And the stories can be based on these 12 archetypes. Do you want to quickly, I mean, I can go through that, but if you want to quickly talk about what these archetypes are, or what are those the plots that Oli talked about? What are these plots that every story should have?
I'm smiling because I write to tell a story, and I had never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be the one talking about these archetypes. But I did my research, and I realized that we can get so focused on archetypes and all sorts of details that we sometimes forget what we started doing, which was to tell a story for whatever reason. So I realized that the easiest way to explain it is this. There's 12 commonalities amongst all humans, but they can all be set aside, and Carl Jung did this, into 3 sets. You're either feeding the ego, you're feeding the soul, or you're feeding the self. Ego, soul, or self. Off of that, he came up with 12 different types, and I'm just going to read them real quick to you guys. But if you ever have a few minutes to yourself, just type in 12 archetypes of storytelling, because it is fascinating stuff. You have the innocent, which of course would be a child. You have the orphan, the hero, the caregiver, the seducer, the rebel, the lover, the creator, the joker, the mentor, the magician, and the ruler. As I read over all these 12 types, I realized that at some point within our storytelling, within our lives, we're one of those. We're not always a mentor. We're not always a hero. We're not always an innocent, or we're not always the joker. It depends on what we're doing, what's going on in our lives, that defines, if you will, what archetype we're going to be labeled as. And I'm a very proud Puerto Rican that just does not like labeling. So I don't ever put myself into any of these buckets, but I do realize that at some point I may be writing I usually write, it's a community magazine. So I've got 12 writers that I'm going to now start looking at their writing differently and go, are you being innocent, or are you being an orphan right now? Not so much because I'm going to judge their writing, in as much as I think it's a beautiful way to learn more about each other. Someone asked earlier, one of the best lessons I've learned, and I learned that from my husband, who was a most eloquent writer. He didn't do it for a living, but he wrote. He was a consummate reader. He read philosophy. He read law books. You gave that man a book, he read it. I live in a library of his books. And because he read so much, he was able to write. So I taught myself to read more. Like I'm writing your names down so I can find your books. I can find a little bit more about you. Because the more I read, hopefully I'm learning lessons that then can become part of my writing. That hopefully can be a part of someone else's narrative, if you will. So now there's 12 archetypes, and we can be any of those, from an innocent to a ruler. And thanks, Nazeera, for giving me homework, by the way.
Thank you. Good, and you did your homework pretty well, Julie. Thank you for letting us know, because some of these things we don't understand. That it has been all it is there out there, and sometimes we forget to get deep into it. And now we can learn more about how the plots are made between these characters in all main stories and movies and dramas or even books. And now Anju's also going to realize how her book, which characters did she have in her thing. So it's good to learn, continue to learn. So John, my next question is for you. I want to talk about the science behind storytelling. So, the science is basically when you hear inspirational stories, looks like there's more blood flow to our brainstem, right? That which also has makes our heart beat, right? So which regulates our breathing and keep us alive. So basically, with positive stories or stories that connect with us, it's allowing us to breathe better, faster, or regulates our breathing. And so this means we feel inspiration to the core of our biological survival. So what I'm trying to get to is the science behind storytelling is so important, right? And clearly research has shown there's the release of dopamine, or the mirroring effect, where you feel exactly what the character is going through and you connect with them. So my question is, in order to persuade our audiences, the story has to connect with whom we are talking to, right? And so, have your stories. How do you know you're connecting with your stories to the audience? Have you had situations where people don't really are able to connect what you're saying, and do you shift gears then?
Okay, great. That's a wonderful question. For me, storytelling is my profession. It's what I do, right?
And just hold on your thoughts. Exactly one of the questions that someone from the audience asked is, can they make storytelling there? How do they make storytelling a profession? So there you go. Thanks. Please continue, John.
Right. So I tell stories for a living. And during the course of honing my skills, I'm still learning. I am a lifelong learner, right? I still teach in a university as a professor, right? So when it comes to storytelling, there is a skill to it. It is an art, right? You need to, first of all, understand your story, own your story, and understand that not everybody would resonate with your story, right? So, as a storyteller, you should have the motive of communicating with just that one person who the story resonates with. I tell stories to uplift people. I tell stories to help people overcome limiting beliefs, right? And I know that everything in life is a cliche, but it is whenever that cliche resonates with you that truly matters. So my story is always a reminder for that person whom it resonates with on that particular day. And also, like she talked about being a mentor at some point, for that person who has never heard the reason why I'm telling that story, that would be a lesson for that person, right? Your story can never, just for those who are listening to me, those who want to become storytellers, there is no way on earth, it is not possible that your story would resonate with everybody. Not possible, right? So look out for just that one person. My mission is to help people understand that they were created on purpose, with a purpose, and for a purpose. And that for as long as they have a dream, it is possible to achieve it. That's my story. It's not going to resonate with everybody. There's so many people sometimes who would say, oh, here goes another motivational speaker. Oh, yes. I wouldn't switch gear for that person because the story doesn't resonate with him or her at that moment. Right? So whenever I start telling my stories, I always start with telling people that I know everything in life is a cliche, but it is whenever that cliche resonates with you that truly matters. So I want you to Listen to me with an open mind because today might be the first day of the rest of your life, right? So I don't shift gears. I come in with a story just to uplift someone, with a story to talk about the topic of the day, or a story to enlighten somebody. And you just need that one person to resonate because you know, as a storyteller, if one person, just one person, can follow through with what you are saying, that person will change the world. That person will change things. That person will influence as many people as possible. So, for those who want to become storytellers, it is an art. You need to develop yourself, you need to constantly learn. I transitioned from shyness to public speaking. I remember when I was a teenager, my mom would call me. She would say, John, I see you as somebody who would end up preaching because when I was pregnant with you, I used to always have this dream. And in this dream, it was always happening, it was always coming to me. In this dream, I would see a tall, dark skinned man dressed in suit, holding a microphone and addressing the crowd. But whenever my mom was telling me that story, I would always tell her, Mom, please just stop. Stop. I know, Mom, you tell a lot of stories. Your stories do come to pass. Your dreams do come to pass. But this one, Mom, will not come to pass. You know why? Because, Mom, your son, I am battling with a high level of shyness. But my mom would say, don't worry, just wait and see. And today, I am a public speaker. I tell stories, right? And my story is to help that person who was, who's struggling with what I was struggling with, to let them know that if I, John, who had the highest level of shyness, could transition from shyness to public speaking, it is also possible for you. So my story is not for everybody. If I'm going for a business training and I'm asked to teach on leadership or leadership principles, I already know that there's so many people there who it might not resonate with. Some people come into a room just with that mindset that, look, man, I need to just go there so it can show on my time sheet that I attended that meeting, right? So I will do my best to stick to the story, stick to what they need to hear, and I'll tell them, if it doesn't resonate with you today, let's try it again. All right. So I
Very
don't
well said.
storytelling. Yeah.
Very well said, John, and definitely not to shift gears, but continue with your story, and also make sure who's listening is also does matter. So,
Right.
Terry, going to thank you, John. So, Terry, sometimes people just don't know where to start, right? And they have the greatest story within themselves through their life experience, and because sometimes it happened during their stage of vulnerability, that they don't want the public or the social society to know what happened to them, but it's just a story even for them to talk about how they dealt with that conflict or how they dealt with that struggle, just like how Anju has a story now. I dealt with all that and look where I am now. But to come to that stage, people need to be honest with themselves and what can they share, what can't they share. So my question is, what are helpful tips for people to keep in mind when crafting their story? And should it be like, what will they think, what will they not think, or should it be the truth that comes out from themselves?
Good question. Good question. Yeah, a story is not always for right now. Okay, your story is your story. It's authentic. It may be, you may want to tell your story for many different reasons, and only you will really know the very right time for it. As a ghostwriter, I've helped a lot of people find out when the right time was as well to release what it is that they are called to do. And number one, I start off with their why. And I tell my clients now, I won't even really start their project until they fill out a why statement. And I do that because over the past 20 some years, I have seen those individuals who don't have a strong why. They sometimes don't ever finish their story, or they don't go in the direction that they really deep down think they're led by what maybe someone else, because they're still afraid to say all of it. They write what someone else may want to hear or can hear at that time. So once you have a why that's very strong, it makes it a little easier to start and to know whether or not it is the right time for that story to come out. There are so many levels of it. So helping them just really start it is a big thing, and then they'll find their way. I use different techniques to help them get unstuck and to help them bring it to the surface, to the point where sometimes they're afraid to tell it because they have no clue of how it's going to develop. So just getting unstuck, starting it, they then can be more confident that, is this the right time for it? Is it not? And then we go from there.
So,
So I hope
mhm.
to answer.
Awesome. So yes, definitely. So Terry, my question, follow-up question is, so basically you're saying it's not just about the proud moments, it's not about, hey, I won, but the stories can be about the moments of defeat or any conflict or any struggle.
Most certainly. And the a lot of the stories are, and we I think Alicia spoke about this when you asked about the timing for it, or how someone talks about their struggles, whether it's a business or an individual. How do you talk about the negative times and such? Usually after you've had a positive outcome from that negative situation is a very good time to talk about that story. And so there's great purpose for speaking about the trauma, the negative, the struggles and obstacles that were there, because there is that right person who needed to hear exactly what you were saying. And it could be just the smallest message that can be just right for that person. Just like when I recorded, my father, it was just perhaps what my stepmother needed to hear, to bring comfort to her. Or when someone is thinking that they're insignificant, even myself, I have to just to bring an example. So much of what I've done over the years, I thought, well, it's not enough. I'm not significant. I'm inadequate for this or that. But when I started blogging about my children, and all the little stages of their life, and the funny things, and the heart wrenching, just being an empty nester, all these things, it really helped encourage myself to know that, hey, I did a pretty good job. They are my best accomplishment in life. And while it may have helped someone else, it blessed me and helped me probably much more than the person I was writing to and blogging to.
Perfect example. And so basically it gave a spiritual practice, sort of. It has empowered yourself before, even when you gave the story to others. So with that, I would like to go to Anju, and then Oli. I'm coming right back to Oli, and Julie, I'm coming back to you for tag team questions. But Anju, there are stories that have stuck with us thousands and thousands and hundreds of years, not just about religious scripts, but just the stories that have been told through oral tradition. They're being passed on from one generation to the other, and also sometimes these stories about morals or history that entertain us or make us think, make us laugh, or make us cry. But my question is, tell us about the journey that led you to writing the book. Tell us about one of the people at the center of the book and what makes them interesting.
So every author has a journey behind the book. And just to kind of expand on that, that's precisely why I run my own YouTube channel called Story Mantra, where I interview professionals from the publishing industry to ask them about the story behind the story. Why they do what they do, what were the obstacles they overcame, and how did they? Because there is no one-day wonder for any author who made it. It's been years of struggle, if not a decade or so. So Can we go back to the question again?
Yes, the question is, tell us about the journey that led you to writing this book and one of the main characters that makes the book interesting.
So the journey was when everything shut down on me. Really, that's how this whole process of what started as one story became a series. We had moved from Singapore to the US. My husband and I, 2 children, several suitcases, and 8 boxes, which were getting shipped from Singapore to the US and came in much later. That was our world. And the magazines that I was writing for in Singapore, India, and Hong Kong didn't have the social media and internet presence that they have now. All they had was a landing page. The people I would interview for articles was irrelevant for the audience and the readers because they were either based in Singapore or Hong Kong or India, and I was interviewing people in the US. So all the doors shut down on me. I was also on a visa which didn't allow me to work, which I'm sure many of you know about, the H-4 visa. So I wasn't allowed to work. So you can imagine that's just a situation, the perfect storm to go into depression. You're writing, and if you write, who do you write for? Because all these avenues shut down. And my kids and my husband, they were there with me, but you can't live your entire life. And especially we were new to this country, we didn't know anything. Everything has shifted gears. So instead of driving left, we were driving right. Instead of doing A, we were doing C. That's when the novel, end of book 2, hit me in a daydream. And I had to work backwards to understand, what on earth is this? Where have I seen this before? Who are these people? Why are they running away? Who are they running away from? Et cetera, et cetera. All the questions that I learned as a journalist, who, what, when, why, where, I had to answer those questions without knowing even where to begin. And there was no author that I knew. There was nobody in the professional novel writing industry that I knew, which is why I do Story Mantra. It's a way of me giving back to myself and paying it forward to those who helped me in my journey. So writing the original draft took 1.5 years. When I started joining writing organizations, the 2 people, and these are not characters, so this is kind of just going away from what you're asking. The 2 people who were pivotal to helping me was a New York Times bestselling author, Haywood Smith, a New York Times bestselling author, Haywood Smith, and a USA Today bestselling author, Jade Lee, who took me under their wings and said, we're going to teach you how to write. They read my first 3 chapters. They helped me understand. They worked with me over the course of several months. So they are even more powerful today for me than my characters, because they gave me the nuggets of wisdom. And, after 10 years of being a journalist, you think you know how to write. And Haywood Smith looked at me and she said, honey, you need to learn how to write. And I was just like, teach me. Help me understand. So that's where the journey began for me. Not even at 0 or ground zero, began at minus 10, 15 feet of digging myself up, pulling myself up and saying, okay, we have to reset the button and start again. And so that is, I think the most powerful story that I can tell you of how it all began for me.
Okay.
Yes, that helps answer.
So yes, definitely. And so my question before I go to Julie is, was it worth spending the time of your life on it?
It's a life journey you live parallel to your own. It's a calling. I don't think I get to choose the stories or the characters. They come and find me. My characters come to me. My stories come to me. I don't get to pick and choose. I'm just the vehicle who puts pen on paper and tries to figure out who, what, when, why, where, what is the story about. The more I write, the more I revise and rewrite, the more the story starts to shine. All the dirt, I can pull that aside and the story gleams. And then I begin to see the theme, the premise, the characters, and of course, the topic which underlies almost every book I write, which is self-empowerment and inspiring. So initially, I write these stories for myself to understand. But as Alicia said, as you start the revision and the cleaning up and the rewriting process, you really have to look at your audience, because you've got to be able to convey it to them, or there's never going to be an emotional connect. And story, at the end of it all, at the end of the day, no matter what medium, it's an emotional journey, an emotional experience.
Very well said. Thank you, Anju, for sharing those few minutes with us about your entire journey. So, Julie, I know you have to leave in 5 minutes, but I have a series of questions for you, Julie. So if you can get to them, and Oli, I'm coming right back to you, so don't doze off. So, Julie, what are common traps for aspiring writers, right? And it doesn't have to be a book. It can be like what you're doing. You're publishing a magazine. What was the best money you ever spent as a writer, right? And what was an early experience where you learned that language had power? Because I've seen your writing, Julie. I mean, it's awesome and it's
Thank you.
engaging. So when did you realize that language had power? Do you read any reviews, good or bad, that is given about your magazine? So I know that a series of
Yeah,
questions, but just get to the
that's
top
fine.
ones.
So the first thing I'll tell you, any writer in my world, I believe we're very vulnerable, but we also are thick-skinned because we realize that we're putting our emotions, our thoughts, ourselves out to the public, whether it be fiction, nonfiction. We become this persona that is going to be judged, that's going to be thrown to the curb or embraced. But we're tough. And it's not because we're better at what we do than someone else, it's because we believe in what we're doing. And I think that's the only reason I've been able to keep a magazine for 12 years. Constantly I hear, well, print is dead. Well, the print I know is alive. And that's what I stick with. I hear, and I've learned to not be critical of those that believe differently than I do. Like when they say print is dead, it's dead to you, but it's alive to the rest of us. Or, well, you're just telling me your story. Well, guess what? I am. And hopefully someone out there can embrace it. And if they can't, it's okay. I'm not writing something to change the world. I'm not writing something to make everybody love me. But hopefully it will touch someone. And the only way I can explain that best is some of my readers are teenagers, and they will actually tell me years later. Like I have one who I mentored her. I went to her school when she was in 7th grade. She's now an attorney. I don't look that old, I know. Thank you. And to hear her say, you said something in my middle school that still sticks with me. I'm like, I did? And she said, yes. And those are the moments that you realize I'm doing something correctly. May not be perfect, but by gosh, if it can make a difference in one person, I'm going to continue to do it. And I am biased. I think most of what I write is for my own selfish ego. I want to hopefully learn from my own experiences, hopefully learn from my own mistakes so I don't repeat them. And perhaps that's what I see in some of my writing. I love reading what other people write because I'm going to learn something from them. It may be just a little vignette of information, but I know I will, because everyone has that story that they're willing to tell. I'm going to embrace it, and by gosh, thank goodness for writers, because we are some of the most vulnerable people out there. And it's in writing. It's never going away. Everyone's brave behind a computer. Everyone's brave about talking, but the moment it's in print, it's not going away. It's going to come back at some point. And the fact, like Terry, I commend you for being able to be a ghostwriter. I did that twice. I'll never do it again. Not so much that I didn't want to, but it's like, oh, that's so much work. So, wow, that's impressive, because you're taking someone else's story and voice, delivering that message and that story for the rest of us to believe it came from that person. Anju, I know I'm going to find your book, by gosh, because I love the title. And again, how vulnerable can we be? And yet we still do it.
Definitely.
So that's probably the most valuable lesson that I've learned over the past 12 years. And English is not my first language. So to have the audacity to write anything in English, and thank you, Nazeera, for thinking it's that nice. That's, again, vulnerability, but we're human. We're supposed to be vulnerable, and we're supposed to learn from one another.
Definitely.
So that's probably why I like to tell stories.
Very
and thank
nice.
you.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was powerful. And definitely, I think we should be open to good and bad criticisms, or good, aspiring messages for our writing, which helps us grow and improve. So, Oli, coming back to you. Only my question to you is, how does a writer, and you mentioned this in the beginning, how does a writer find that balance between his writing and work and family? And is there is that something needs to be prioritized, or they just take it as day comes by and make sure they work towards their goal. Can you unmute? Oli, you're still on mute. Yes.
That's really a good question, Nazeera, because apart from my professional life, I have my social life too. It's very interesting how you have to get the taste of writing amidst your busy schedules in the office, home, and social life. But to me, a writer inside me is always alive. I don't need to have a special time to go sit in a corner and start writing. Everywhere, every time, I always carry. As Sanju said, there are always characters in you who force you to write. So any given situation, if I get an idea, I just mark it down. That's all. So it gets the idea develops, conceptualizes, and develops inside us. I feel that nothing stays inside a body when it has to come out. So as the story. So once it is ready, then you push yourself to some place and sit and pen it. So I don't see any difficulty as far as writing is concerned. Of course, other things we may find difficult to manage, but as far as writing is concerned, even while listening to other speakers, something is parallelly running in our mind. That's how it happens. Where we are not very much focused in our routine life, for example, walking, eating, sometimes all this would come. Even while watching a television, I get some ideas. Why not we do that? Immediately, whenever I get an idea, I write it down. So I will note down those small ideas. So later on, start working with that. And character is very important. So I assume it as each character, I live it with that at least a few days before I mold it and bring it out in the paper. That's how I manage. So far, I've been managing my second collection of short stories is due for publication shortly. Thank you.
Very nice. So we'll finish in the next 5 minutes with the closing comments. But only my follow-up question to you is how, so as a publisher, have you had more positive experiences with people bringing their books to you? Or can you just talk about the overall experience with authors who bring the books to you for publishing?
Yes, today, there are more writers in 2021 than readers, I would say, because everyone want to be writer. Because social media gives them an opportunity to try out their writing, and when they get more likes and comments, people immediately wants to see that it comes out in a book. But it is not as simple as that because whatever you write, it doesn't become a book. You need to. I tell them that it requires editing and polishing. All that would make a book readable by audiences. In social media, it's different because your contacts, your friends, whatever you say about yourself, people would come. But when it comes to book, that is what is very important. But the positive note is, I would say that everyone has got that ability to write. It is embedded in our genes. What has separated us from the rest of the species is our ability to communicate, our ability to tell stories. It's all embedded in our genes. Look at 6, 7 year old kid coming out from school. She will tell a nice story. But over the years, we have, somehow we miss out that. So all that we need to do is everybody has a talent. We need to dig it out. So everybody can write. That's what I used to tell people. But whatever that you write, you cannot expect others to read it, which requires a lot of editing and polishing.
Okay.
So we have seen that even in the last 1.5 years, we have seen very many authors have signed up with us. I would say, in terms of publishing, very productive 2021. Thank you.
Very nice, Oli. Thank you. So Terry and Anju, quick 2-second answers. Yeah. So Anju and then Terry. Anju, Terry. So how many hours a day do you write?
Right now, I was just in the editing process. I would say 5 to 6 hours.
Terry?
Ooh, lots. That's all I can say. Lots. My day starts at 2 a.m. and I am writing all day long, different genres.
Wow, John, you're on mute.
Okay, I do more of reading.
So you read what Terry and Anju write.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do more reading, and the only writings I do because I go along. I always have journals. You know, I have journals. The brown one, I write my ideas. The black one, I write my daily activities, my
Wow.
plan. Right. So I do just a few
Very nice. We need to learn
minutes.
from you. We need to learn from you. So, Anju, does your family support your career as a writer?
150%. And my kids are the ones who helped me. In fact, now they're 25 and 21. Build my brand, come down with a core value statement, mission statement. They made me think through and answer a lot of questions. And also, the title Winds of Fire series. So there's a lot of support because my son, who's a 25-year-old, he's also an artist. He's a DJ, he's a music producer. So he tells his stories through music.
Definitely, yes. And that's what we never even talked about music, but definitely stories are told in several different medium. So, Terry, does your family support your career as a writer?
Oh my goodness, yes. That's all they know me to be. And they're used to my crazy hours too because of my writing.
Very nice. And how about John and Oli? And I doesn't mean that you have to be a writer, but your professional speaking skill also included, John. Do you get your family support?
Oh yes, I do. I only have one book written so far, right? So
And
yes,
that was Amazon's bestseller too, on the bestsellers
yes,
list. So, you
yes.
did great.
Thank you.
How about
Thank you.
you, Oli?
As long as I don't bother them with my, writing to them to read and give comments, they support me very much.
Very nice. And that itself is supportive, right? You do what you want and do it
Yeah.
best. We won't disturb you. Very nice. So, definitely we talked about, as we come to a close of our session, definitely we talked about influencing, we talked about business marketing, sales, and we talked about organic writing of characters, building it in, and that everybody can become a writer. And it's not just about sharing their success stories. It can be about how they came out and work through a struggle, but definitely something to start with. Looks like writing or storytelling is a profession in itself, and John is a living example of how shy he was and where he's now into public speaking. So with that, I do want to please provide you with 20 seconds each, or 20 to 30 seconds closing comments, and then we would say thanks and thank you and bye to the audience for our session today, for listening to us. Go ahead. I'd like to start with John.
Okay, thank you, Nazeera, and it was a pleasure, sharing this virtual platform with Terry, Andrew, Oli, and the other speakers. Now, I really want to tell whoever's listening that whatever your dreams are, it is possible to achieve it. I have a company. What we do is we certify coaches, people who want to become life coaches, and we have a platform to help people become public speakers. We show them strategies on how to become public speakers. If that's what your calling is, feel free to connect with me. I'm on Instagram, Dr. John Ugulu. I am on Facebook, and I'll be more than willing to work with you to help you transition from where you are to where you want to be in terms of public speaking. And thank you so much, Terry. I have a niece who is an A student. She wants to become a doctor. She's currently struggling with an autoimmune disease. She's a baby. She's 18 years. I would love to connect with you after this call because she's going through a lot right now, please, if that's okay. All right. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, John, for taking your time this afternoon out of your busy schedule to join us. Terry, closing comments, please.
Yeah, that right there. There's always someone who can resonate with what I've gone through health-wise, that I just love reaching out to and extending that help. So story writing, it just really helps a person get out there to the world, what it is they want to be, what do they want to do, how they can reach people, only that target market. Not everyone is your cup of tea, but how they can reach that one, as was spoken of many times here in this program, and just how do they want to show up in the world to leave a legacy. And as I'm switching over to doing that with individuals, helping them in this fourth quarter of life to leave a legacy and not a load, I am still hosting book workshops. So I would love to help anyone who does want to write a book and just they don't know how to start, where to start, if it's for them or not. And I would love to connect with you. I'm sure Nazeera, you have the information for individuals. And thank you again, Nazeera. This was just great. This was wonderful, and you are such a wonderful host.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terry. And just goes back to say a storyteller just doesn't have to do it in writing. Like John here is a public speaker and he does more of speaking than writing. And it can be done through artists, through painting, and Anju's son is a DJ, so he's storytelling through his music. But the thing is not to shy away from any of the storytelling that you have in your heart, that you need to put it out. And it doesn't happen overnight, but you can come out slowly to talk about it. So Anju, go ahead with your closing comments, please.
First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with so many professionals here on the stage. I think it's really been inspiring. I think the way that I could best sum up a closing statement would be to say, don't be afraid to create. It could be any form of any art. Don't be afraid to create. At least put it down. Give yourself the validation that you can create, own your creativity. And the professional side, if you want to go that route, will automatically fall in place. Seek others like you, because writing is a lonely profession in the same way that oil on canvas can be lonely, in the same way that creating music can be lonely. But find others like you, find your tribe. That's how I managed to move forward, despite the hundreds of rejections that I received over the course of 20 years of submissions. Find your tribe, they will find you, and your story is not meant for everybody, in the same way that your story that found you did not go to somebody else. But put that story down in whatever medium form, and the right people will find your story. And before you know it, you will help change someone's life for the better.
Very well said. I love the find your tribe, and this has stuck with me for the past 10 years. Everybody is not our tribes, because we need people and we need to connect with them. They need to connect and relate. Relatability is also important. So thank you, Anju, for your time. So Oli, go ahead with closing comments, please.
Thank you, Nazir. I never thought that this would be a wonderful night because it's a long time since I woke up early in the morning at 1 o'clock, 12:30 in the morning.
And it's what, like 3
also,
a.m. for you right now? Oh my gosh, and you're
yeah,
still
it's
awake.
now, yes, it's 3:15. I woke up, I went to bed at 9 o'clock last night and woke up at around 12:30. Then now it's quite interesting actually.
Thank you,
I
Oli.
don't let my children to sit through the night and do anything. But today I have to do the different thing. But it's really wonderful sitting with people from other side of the world and talking to them. And you have absolutely proved to be a wonderful host. It was nice of you. My message is that if you want to get your books published in India, it's because India is an emerging market, not only for English, but other languages also. You can always count my support, not only the panelists here, but also the scores of listeners who are watching this show. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Oli. And definitely all the information of the panelists will be sent out in a follow-up email with their contact information and their websites. So look forward to our follow-up email. Thank you so much for joining us from any part of the world that you've joined us. And again, a Chai and Just Chat unites people with different perspectives, and we believe that there is a common ground that we can all understand each other. And we look forward to hosting the December Chai and Just Chat. Visit our website www.chaiandjustchat.com, and we thank our sponsor Vendership for continuing to believe in the dialogues that we are creating along with Chai and Joy. So thank you again. Thank you so much. Become a storyteller. You have it in you, and you can do it in different mediums: writing, speaking, singing, reading, or creating short stories or movies as well, which has become as easy as having your cell phone with you. So thank you again. Thank you for joining us. Panelists, thank you. Appreciate you. And have a good rest of the morning or the evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.